Well, I don't know what to say about the 8th generation of video games, but so far, it is the worst generation in video game history, excluding the 1st and 2nd. Wikipedia didn't put any 8th gen games on their most critically acclaimed video games of all time list. No 8th gen home console made it in my top 10 home consoles of all time list, which isn't in YouTube yet, but instead still in my brain. The gaming industry gained a new threat. The 8th generation is a bit worse than the 6th. However, I think that the 9th generation of video games will begin early of next year with nothing other than Nintendo's new console, the Nintendo Switch, which used to be the Nintendo NX. What is the Nintendo Switch, you may ask? Well, other than being Nintendo's 9th gen console, it is a hybrid of a handheld console and a home console. Honestly, I consider that to be a wonderful idea, because when it comes to home video game consoles, you can only play them at home, or at least as long as they're connected to a TV, and when you go outside, you can't play them because there are no TVs outside. Handheld consoles, on the other hand, you can play anywhere at any time you want, but they can't be connected to a TV unless you have the Super Game Boy for the Super Nintendo, Game Boy Player for the GameCube, or other crap like that. The Nintendo Switch, however, can both be connected to a TV and be played anywhere at any time you want at the same time. When you play it anywhere at any time you want, the console is a handheld. More specifically, it looks more like a Wii U gamepad, except with no requirement to connect to the TV, no stylus, a stand to put the handheld on, detachable subcontrollers, which turn out to be the Joy-Con side pieces, and something I didn't expect, the option for only one of the two Joy-Con side pieces to be played. Honestly, viewers, I don't consider the concept of these two side pieces to be played without being required to be attached to the handheld itself to be bad. In fact, I find it to be kind of cool if you're playing both of the side pieces, because when only playing one of the two, it will honestly be like playing the Nintendo DS, but worse. There's only one bumper button, the Start and Select buttons aren't together there, the side piece is smaller than the Nintendo DS or possibly as small as the Nintendo DS, and the controls for the games on the Nintendo Switch might get worse if you're only playing one out of the two side pieces. If I'm playing the Nintendo Switch as a handheld and putting it on a stand, I'd be detaching the two side pieces and playing both of them. If I and someone else are playing together on multiplayer on the Nintendo Switch as a handheld, each of us probably have to use only one out of the two side pieces, which I think might be uncomfortable for each of us. When you play it when it's connected to the TV, on the other hand, it is a home console. How can it be connected to the TV, you ask? Well, it is connected to the TV via this thing, which reminds me of a charger for the handheld version of the console. If it is both a home console version of the console and a charger for the console at the same time, I would be very impressed. If you play the Nintendo Switch as a home console, the controller for it won't be the console itself or the two Joy-Con side pieces, but instead the Nintendo Switch Pro Controller, which I'd be using all the time if I'm playing the Nintendo Switch as a home console, unless there are other controllers to play Nintendo Switch games with. There is, however, another controller for the Nintendo Switch so far, but it doesn't have the exact same purpose as usual video game consoles have. In fact, its purpose is to harbor the two Joy-Con side pieces if you're not playing the Nintendo Switch as a handheld console. It's called the Joy-Con Grip, and it's connected to the back of the Nintendo Switch Pro Controller. I don't know if there's a thingy that separates the Joy-Con Grip and the Nintendo Switch Pro Controller from each other, but not really just far away enough from each other or not. But if there isn't, the Nintendo Switch Pro Controller will be as uncomfortable to play as a Duke controller for the original Xbox at its best. Anyways, a video game console obviously isn't a video game console without video games to play there. I saw 6 on the trailer for the console, but Wikipedia claims the console will have 14 excluding the 5 out of the 6 games shown at the trailer because Nintendo stated the footage on the Switch's screen does not necessarily reflect any confirmed titles for the system, and were only selected to demonstrate the Switch's range of functionality. I'll talk more about the games shown on the trailer than the games proven by Wikipedia to be on the console. Anyways, the 6 games shown on the trailer are The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Skyrim, a new Mario Kart game, NBA 2K17, a new 3D Mario game, and a new Splatoon game. The first I want to talk about is the only confirmed Nintendo Switch game shown in the trailer, which happens to be The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which I already talked about in my video about my experience in E3 2016, but I'm going to talk about it again here, just less. Anyways, while I honestly don't think The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild will be the greatest Zelda game of all time, or the best video game in general of all time, I still think it will be an amazing addition to the Zelda franchise. The rest of the games shown on the trailer were not confirmed titles, and in fact, were only selected to demonstrate the Switch's range of functionality. God, I said that twice in this video. The first of these 5 games I want to talk about in this video is Skyrim. Skyrim in a Nintendo console. Cool. I never thought Skyrim, scratch that, a game by Bethesda, scratch that too, a game from a third-party developer that hasn't supported or was no longer supporting Nintendo on a 9th gen Nintendo console. I think that'll be awesome, considering that Skyrim is one of my single favorite video games on the Xbox 360, but it wasn't confirmed as a game for the Nintendo Switch yet, probably because of the complicated controls of the console. I want Skyrim confirmed as a Nintendo Switch game, and while you're at it, Nintendo, be sure to balance the options for what controls you want to use depending on the controllers for the console. If you're playing the game on your Nintendo Switch as a home video game console, you're obviously using one controller, the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, so let the game know that and have the Nintendo Switch Pro controller as your controller for the game. If you're playing the game on the Nintendo Switch as a handheld, on the other hand, it has 3 control schemes, so let the game know that and have options of which one of the 3 required control schemes you want to use for the game. That's all I want to say about Skyrim on the Nintendo Switch, folks. Nintendo, so Nintendo, please, I want Skyrim confirmed as a Nintendo Switch game, and please, Nintendo, will you follow my directions on how to balance the control schemes on the game, please? If so, confirm it as a Nintendo Switch game, and I'll be happy. Very happy. Anyways, the next game shown on the trailer is the next game in the Mario Kart series, which looks everything like a port of Mario Kart 8 on Nintendo Switch, and nothing like the next Mario Kart game. If you're confirming it as a Nintendo Switch game, Nintendo, put something new in that game instead of just leaving it the way it is. If you ran out of ideas for that game, just make it a port of Mario Kart 8 for the Nintendo Switch, which thankfully means you don't have to set the game in space. That's all I can say about that game, viewers. I don't know how I feel about Mario Kart 8, except that I like it, but let's move on. But the next game shown on the trailer is NBA 2K17, which I'll talk about less because the game is a basketball game, which I'm not a fan of. So let's move on to the next game shown in the trailer, which I'll thankfully talk about more, and that game is, thank God, a new game in the main Mario series, a 3D one. But that game is in the style of Super Mario 3D Land and Super Mario 3D World, both of which are kind of similar, and I think those 2 games are like Super Mario Land for the original Game Boy and Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo respectively, except both in 3D, and honestly and sadly, I don't mainly want another 3D Mario game like this. If you're confirming that new 3D Mario game as a Nintendo Switch title, Nintendo, would you like to change the gameplay? Because I sadly won't be too okay with wanting a game similar to Super Mario 3D Land or Super Mario 3D World. I instead mainly want a sequel to Super Mario 64 that is similar to Super Mario 64. Either that or a sequel to Super Mario Galaxy 2. I honestly prefer a sequel to Super Mario 64, but I'd be okay if Nintendo makes a sequel to Super Mario Galaxy 2 instead. I haven't played Super Mario Sunshine yet. The last game shown on the trailer is a new Splatoon game, which, like that new Mario Kart game, looks exactly like the same as its predecessor. If you're confirming that as a Nintendo Switch game as well, Nintendo, just think of new ideas for that game, please. Otherwise, you'd either make it a port of the original Splatoon for the Nintendo Switch or set that game in space. That's all the games shown in the trailer, but I still have to talk about the rest of the 13 games that Wikipedia claims to be confirmed for the system. Just not a lot. In fact, I might only mention the games' names and their existence on the Nintendo Switch. The rest of the 13 games Wikipedia claims to be confirmed for the Nintendo Switch are Project Sonic 2017, Just Dance 2017, an untitled Pokemon game, Rise Race of Future, Dragon Quest 10 and 11, Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom, Riverside, Sunu Ikibu, Din Nahu, an untitled Nobunaga's Ambition game, Cube Life Island Survival HD, Tenkit, and Dungeon of Zar. Like I said, I'm not going to describe any of these games. I'm just going to mention their names and existence for the Nintendo Switch. But anyways, let's talk about what games I'd like to be on the Nintendo Switch. For first-party titles, I'd like a new Pikmin, a new Kid Icarus, a new Mario Party, a new Super Smash Bros., a new Kirby game, a new Metroid game, whether it's a new Metroid Prime game that's not Federation Force, or a 2D Metroidvania, like Super Metroid, and a sequel to Donkey Kong 64 that plays like Donkey Kong 64, even though I'd actually be okay with a sequel to Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze instead. I'd also like a 3D platformer in the Yoshi series that stars Yoshi, but not Baby Mario, Baby Peach, Baby Luigi, Baby DK, Baby Bowser, or any other baby versions of Mario characters. I'd also like Birdo in it, because of her relationship with Yoshi as a love interest. The controversy revolving around Star Fox Zero didn't make me in the mood to wish for a new Star Fox game on the Switch. For third-party titles, I was thrilled that Nintendo will not only gain more third-party support than they did with both the Wii and Wii U, but also possibly gain as much third-party support to their Switch console as much as Microsoft and Sony did to their Xbox One and PS4 consoles respectively. Third-party developers like EA, Ubisoft, Warner Bros., Bethesda, THQ Nordic, Epic Games, Square Enix, and even Take-Two Interactive are all supporting the Nintendo Switch as much as they did to Microsoft's Xbox 360 and Xbox One consoles and Sony's PS1, PS2, PS3, and PS4 consoles. So that means that Nintendo is actually not targeted only to kids, but now also to adults, teenagers, and seniors. Anyways, what third-party titles do I want to be on the Nintendo Switch, you may ask? Well, I want BioShock the Collection, Red Dead Redemption 2, Psychonauts 2, and other third-party titles to be on the Switch. That's all I would like to say about what third-party titles I want on the system. Before I say my conclusion about Nintendo's new system and the future of video games, I have a few more things about the Switch. 5 to be exact. Number 1. Does the Nintendo Switch have a touchscreen on the handheld version of the console? If so, would you like to add a stylus to the console too? Number 2. Does the Nintendo Switch have an online gaming service? If so, it is probably Nintendo Network. Number 3. Does the Nintendo Switch have Nintendo eShop, so that you can shop for something like digital versions of Nintendo Switch games? If so, will you include Virtual Console in there too? Number 4. Does the handheld version of the Nintendo Switch have microphones and a camera? And number 5. Does the Nintendo Switch have something like connectivity to Wii remotes or a motion capture webcam like the Xbox Kinect and PlayStation 4 camera? If you're going with the motion capture webcam, Nintendo, that'll be cool, considering that if it can also take pictures, you won't need to take pictures with only the handheld version of the Nintendo Switch. And those are all of my 5 things I'd like to say about the Nintendo Switch. In conclusion, if Nintendo responds to most of my questions with a no, Nintendo won't have a bright future. But if Nintendo responds to most of my questions with a yes instead, Nintendo will have a bright future. Not only that, but also the Nintendo Switch will hopefully sell better than the Wii U did, and hell, even be better than it. I mean, okay, it will come out in 4 months and a lower launch price than the Wii U had, but hey, Nintendo will explain more about the Switch later on before the console's release. If so, and in a good way, the console will rock. I mean, with a desirous future library for the console, a bunch of first-party titles we can dream of, better third-party support, creative controls, a cool concept for a video game console, and possibilities for the console's settings and features, the console will overall rock, sell better, and be better than the Wii U, and if Microsoft and Sony make good 9th gen consoles as well, prove to the world that the gaming industry will still be okay as long as there are good consoles and good games in the 9th generation of video games. And hell, maybe the 9th generation of video games will even be better than the 8th, even though the Nintendo Switch won't be the greatest video game console of all time, or the greatest video game console Nintendo has ever made, the console will still rock as long as my things revolving around the system's features and games will be responded with a yes. Do you agree with me on any of my opinions on the Nintendo Switch? How do you feel about the Nintendo Switch? Let me know in the comments. My next video will be a review on the game, whose name I dare not say until that video releases. I think it will come out next month, I hope. Anyways, until then, I'll see you next time.